From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Saini Gray. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed the Nicaraguan Investment Conditionality Act, or the NICA Act, into law. This will see a number of economic sanctions imposed on the government of Nicaragua. Our correspondent in Managua, Maria Jose Diaz, explains.
This Thursday, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, signed the NICA Act, a bill that had arrived in the U.S. Congress in 2016, brought forth by both Cuban-American lawmakers and the Nicaraguan opposition. It imposes a series of economic sanctions on the government of Nicaragua and forms part of the U.S. imperialist policies against progressive governments. This interventionist law requires the approval of the United States for loans to be granted to the Nicaraguan government by international financiers. It was just approved this year under a context of crisis for Nicaragua, which was provoked beginning April 18th by groups opposed to the government in a failed coup attempt. The attempt left 199 dead, 1 disappeared, and caused economic damage to the country. There are many opinions on the ground. Some say that this would affect the least fortunate and say that they are not happy with the Nicaraguans who have supported and have actually gone to ask for sanctions on the Nicaraguan people. Others are rejecting U.S. interventionism and ask for peace so that they can continue working as usual. On the other hand, experts are not surprised by the decision and believe that the government has a plan B in order to address the situation. We will continue to wait for an official statement.
And the foreign minister of Cuba was among the first to publicly react. Minister Bruno Rodriguez tweeted, "Our full solidarity with Nicaragua and the Sandinista government against the unilateral and imperialist sanctions imposed under #NICA Act." And to speak more on Nicaragua, we are being joined by Chuck Kaufman, the National Coordinator for the Alliance for Global Justice. He's based in Arizona, but he's been a national Nicaragua Solidarity organizer for over 31 years. Chuck, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So what do you make of Trump's signing of the NICA Act on Thursday?
Well, not surprised at all. It's 80 years of U.S. intervention in Nicaragua, and I've been working for 31 years to try to set the record straight and to change U.S. policy.
What could be some of the consequences of the NICA Act?
It could cut off international capital for Nicaragua, but it's not certain yet that that'll be the case. In the past, the U.S. has pretty much had veto power over multilateral loans, but the Inter-American Development Bank, for instance, last year changed from requiring a consensus to a majority vote, and the U.S. doesn't have a majority in the Inter-American Development Bank. We don't know yet what will happen with the World Bank. It doesn't have a majority in any of the multilateral lenders. I think President Trump may not command quite the blind following from the rest of the world that previous presidents might have enjoyed.
So Nicaragua's government removed a number of NGOs from the country. Why did they do that?
Well, if you're going to support a coup, you better win, because there's consequences if you're on the losing side. And it's not legal in any country to try to overthrow the government. This is actually a pretty mild response. The Nicaraguan government ended the legal existence of these NGOs, but it didn't put the leaders in jail or have other sanctions like would happen in many countries.
So since you're joining us from the U.S., Chuck, what do you make of the international media coverage of the events that transpired in Nicaragua, which began in April? And how do you think the situation is being perceived because of the international media coverage?
Well, the coverage has been shameful. It's not journalism. It's stenography of the State Department line, the opposition line. The opposition in Nicaragua are people who have been trained over the years in how to manipulate social media, et cetera, through the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID democracy promotion grants, and we're seeing the fruit of that investment now, and the media doesn't even bother to interview people who don't fall into that official narrative.
Chuck Kaufman, thank you so much for chatting with us. We appreciate your insight on this.
Thank you.
The Colombian government has ejected Venezuelan official Carlos Pino from the country. This move has been widely rejected by social activists who demand that President Iván Duque work to improve the relationship between both countries.
After Carlos Pino was removed from the country, Colombia's immigration director said this decision was made to protect the country's sovereignty.
This report has information where you can figure out that this person could have disturbed public order and national security. These are the grounds on which the decision to eject him from the country was made. This was classified information.
Gloria Flores, the wife of the Venezuelan official Carlos Pino, pointed out that this decision by the Colombian government seeks to disrupt relations with Venezuela. They are asking Venezuelan authorities to be aware of this situation, which is part of the campaign against President Nicolás Maduro.
My husband's case must not be used as a scapegoat for more aggression. I don't want it to be used for that purpose. And I ask the Venezuelan government to be careful. Please don't fall for the games of those who want to start a fight.
In the face of Pino's expulsion, Congress members have demanded a statement from President Iván Duque.
The question that I ask the President and the Foreign Minister is, where are they taking us with this type of actions? Duque is making known that on January 10, he's going to escalate the diplomatic crisis with Venezuela.
At the end of the press conference, international measures will be taken against what many consider a dirty move.
We're going to talk with the European Union, with the United Nations Human Rights Commission, and we're going to raise an international alert that human rights are being violated. Life and peace is being put in danger in Colombia.
The removal of Venezuelan citizen Carlos Pino is just one of the many actions that this government of Iván Duque has taken to disrupt Venezuela.
In Venezuela, 15,000 people attended the Bolivarian People's Congress in the company of the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. More on that event and his speech in this report.
Chavismo showed its support for the new lines of action announced by the government for 2019. Nicolás Maduro reiterated his position to defend his mandate and to reject intervention from Colombia.
All polls that I know of show that more than 80% of Venezuelans reject any type of international intervention. Any problems Venezuelans may have, we will solve them here, in peace. We don't need the Colombian oligarchy and Iván Duque to talk about Venezuela. Iván Duque doesn't even govern Colombia and wants to govern Venezuela. Go away, Iván Duque.
The Venezuelan president spoke of the importance of the implementation of the plan for the homeland as part of the revolution.
I am prepared and I feel safe with everything we've done. I am confident because I have a plan. The plan that you approved on May 20th. The plan of the homeland 2019-2025. And come rain or shine, we will make this plan a reality.
Following news of an orchestrated plan by other nations against the Bolivarian process, the Venezuelan head of state had this to say.
If someday difficult events take place and you see that President Maduro was kidnapped or they did anything to Maduro, I am telling you, workers' class, men and women, take to the streets, regain power and create a more powerful revolution, even more socialist, even more Chavista.
During this meeting, the fight against corruption and the creation of a national coordination of the Bolivarian Congress of the Peoples were key components for the new presidential period of Nicolás Maduro, which will begin on January 10th.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a few. Welcome back. Chilean port workers in Valparaiso have reached a deal to put an end to a month-long strike action which had caused fruit exports to fall significantly. The workers received assurances from the company Terminal Pacifico Sur that they would provide them with a bonus, more formal contracts and improved working conditions. Port employees say they will return to work once the agreement is signed and all proposals are met. And Chile's police chief has resigned following the release of a video that shows the death of the Mapuche activist Camilo Catrayanca. After Hermes Soto tendered his resignation on Thursday at the request of President Sebastian Pinera, 10 other police generals also called it quits. This was followed by clashes between the police and protesters who were on the streets of Santiago.
The National Police Force needs new leadership. Today, I asked for the resignation of General Jeremias Soto East, the chief of the National Police. The process for his removal is already under.
And Chile's Constitutional Court is debating whether to grant parole to former soldiers accused of crimes against humanity under the Pinochet dictatorship. To allow parole, an amendment would have to be made into law. Members of the political coalition party, Chile Vamos, have petitioned the court to declare the amendment unconstitutional. The former soldiers are accused of carrying out kidnappings, forced disappearances, torture, and the rape and murder of women and children.
This country knows that those who committed crimes against humanity, genocide and mass torture deserve to be condemned.
We are here because we don't want the criminals to escape the justice by serving their full terms in jail. Because they commit many human rights violations, they cannot go unpunished. They were murderers, raped women, killed children, and tortured people.
And the country's Human Rights Commission has approved jail terms for any person who denies the crimes committed during the Pinochet dictatorship. Under the new measure, fines will also be issued. Chile is finally adhering to international law by condemning people who deny the barbarity of the military dictatorship. Ecuadorians have taken to the streets to reject the new economic measures introduced by President Lenin Moreno. Teachers, students, drivers, and everyday citizens gathered in Quito to protest. This was the first demonstration against the government's so-called paquetazo, which is made up of price hikes, budget cuts, and layoffs.
Personally, I think that this is the height of what we're seeing with the bundled austerity measures. With the price hikes, with the rise of gasoline prices, I think this is going to affect all of us, and I think if we stay quiet, we're going to be worse. So we need to protest. We need to say enough is enough.
This
event is organized by a number of social organizations, of transport and self-employed workers, and of course workers' unions. We are here as citizens, but also as assembly members to join the public in rejecting the economic measures of this government. The government has raised the price of fuel, which means that the price of everything will go up in Ecuador. For example, basic necessities. This will affect the poor, the majority of Ecuadorians. On the other hand, they forgive multi-million-dollar debts for those who have the most, the bankers, for the multinational companies. Billions of dollars were forgiven for millionaires.
Mexican police have detained at least 24 migrants as they try to evict them from the Benito Juarez Sports Center in Tijuana. In the early hours of Thursday, police raided the complex to evict some 200 migrants. They have been moved to an alternative shelter while they wait for their asylum claims to the United States to be processed. The official reason for the raid is not yet known. During a business forum in Uruguay, President Tabaré Vázquez spoke about the country's economic growth through 2018 and added that Uruguay will not enter a recession.
Despite what has been said of Uruguay, that we were going to enter a recession in December, that simply did not happen. We saw an economic growth of 2.5% in the third trimester alone. According to forecasts by the Ministry of the Economy, we also believe that this fourth trimester will show growth of either 2 or 2.5%. Uruguay did not go into recession, and it will not go into recession.
Grenada's top telecommunications company, Flow, has filed a lawsuit against the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority for discrimination. It wants it to revoke a decision made by the regulator to award the 700 spectrum license to an Irish-based company, Digicel. Flow has claimed that the regulator unfairly awarded the license to Digicel, despite the fact that both countries simultaneously applied for it. And hidden in the middle of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Royal Portuguese Reading Room Library makes visitors feel like they've walked onto a movie set. Built in 1837, the Grand Library holds around 350,000 books. It has been selected as the fourth most beautiful library in the world by Time magazine. The library also has the largest collection of Portuguese literature outside of Portugal. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Israeli forces have killed a 16-year-old boy and injured 25 people in the Gaza Strip, according to Palestinian health officials. The Israeli military said about 8,000 Palestinians protested near the border fence, mostly peaceful. Some protesters burned tires and tried to throw an explosive device into Israel without success. Since weekly border protests began in March of 2018, Israeli forces have killed more than 220 Palestinians. The former South African President Jacob Zuma is set to return to politics next year. The African National Congress has nominated Zuma as part of a list of members who will be heading to Parliament after the 2019 elections. It is not yet clear if Zuma will accept the nomination. He resigned as president earlier this year following demands from his party to step down amidst corruption scandals. And 5 suspects have appeared in court in Kenya on terrorism charges. The 5 men are accused of killing at least 148 students during an attack on a university in 2015. The Somali jihadist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. They said it was revenge against the Kenyan government for sending soldiers across the border into Somalia.
Puts me in a difficult position to...
The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has called on the British government to abide by its obligations and allow Julian Assange to walk free. Assange has been living inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London for over 6 years, fearing he will be extradited to the United States if he leaves. In a statement, the WGAD points out that the charges which forced Assange to request political asylum in 2012 were dropped over 18 months ago. On Thursday, he was visited by 2 German MPs who were critical of the UK government's role in the deadlock over his future. Thousands of pro-Catalan, pro-independence protesters have taken to the streets of Barcelona, Spain. They are protesting against a government cabinet meeting that was held in the city. Protesters are angry that the Spanish government picked their city as the venue for their weekly meeting. They have described it as a mockery of their struggle for independence. At least 11 people have been arrested after police cracked down on protesters gathered near the meeting. 15 people have been injured in clashes. Friday's meeting was held exactly 1 year after the previous Spanish government held snap elections in Catalonia.
This is a provocation from a colonial government. They have come to the colony to tell us things. They have told us this morning that they have renamed the airport as if it were a great thing to do. No, what they have to do is to negotiate which state we will have the referendum, and that's all.
The 21st of December last year, when we were forced to vote in regional elections, we won, and our government was taken away from us, and theirs was implemented. We don't want them. We want them to leave. We want a republic. We don't want to pay taxes in Spain because we want them for our own people.
And our correspondent in Barcelona, Joan Ortiz, was at the scene. He sent this report before the violence broke out.
A day of mobilizations has been taking place in Barcelona, and despite some clashes between protesters and the police, the majority of the marches have gone off peacefully. The first clashes took place near one of the access points to Lotja de Mar, where the cabinet meeting is taking place. Large areas around the meeting have been cordoned off for security reasons. Nonetheless, early in the morning, members of the Committees for the Defense of the Republic, or CDR, started marching towards the cabinet meeting from various points in Barcelona. Access to the Catalan capital has basically been shut down due to the various mobilizations and road blockades set up by protesters. This meeting is seen as a provocation to the pro-independence movement, who are unhappy about the presence of Spanish authorities here. Many feel this is a slap in the face and a forceful reminder that Catalonia is being ruled not by its own government, but by the Spanish government. Less than 24 hours ago, Spanish President Pedro Sánchez and the President of the government of Catalonia, Quim Torra, met and agreed to maintain an open dialogue between both sides. Nonetheless, what was very evident was that the Spanish and Catalan positions are very far apart. One side seems to care only about the right to self-determination, while the other cares only about autonomy. We have to wait and see if these two sides can find a middle ground.
And dozens of people have gathered in Lisbon, Portugal to protest. We end with news that the South Korean Research Institute has announced that the K-pop band BTS is boosting tourism in the country. A reported 1 out of every 15 tourists visited South Korea last year because of the increasing popularity of the band. Now, BTS is estimated to be worth $3.6 billion to the domestic economy. Earlier this year, the group became the first K-pop band to top the U.S. music charts. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourenglish.net. And join us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.